Hi, everyone. Welcome to yet another interview in this series. Would you guys like to introduce yourself? I've got special guests today.
Hello everyone. I'm Red from Echo Project. I work on Glory Hounds. I'm the project lead.
And I am Sabre. I work with Red on Glory Hounds. And yeah, I'm co-writer and do some of the art assets, mostly backgrounds.
I'm going to be running you guys through a series of questions today about visual novel production, about budget, about scope, about writing. Just a lot of it's even built from questions that were specifically asked by the viewers when I asked what they most wanted to ask visual novel creators if they were looking to make one themselves. So up first is, what made you want to make a furry visual novel in the first place?
I've been playing visual novels for a long time. Like I played some of the really old ones. Um, what made me want to write a furry visual novel was I played Blackgate and Echo, and then I got talking to Howley. Like I messaged Howley out of the blue, and we became friends. And he asked me to help write some short stories because I showed him some of my writing, and he ended up liking it. And that slowly ended up, well, developing into something more. And eventually he offered to fund a visual novel for me. And it's kind of like my dream project. So that's been nice.
I think for me, I've always been into writing. I've always been into stories as long as I can remember. Back in my college days, I used to write a lot. And then later in life, I also got into drawing. And I was first introduced to furry visual novels by Red, basically. Got started with Adastra and then later Echo. And I decided that, this is a medium that brings two of those things that I love together. Because I have a lot of ideas and a lot of stories that I want to tell. And at the time, Red needed some help with getting Glory Hounds going, so I joined in from there, and that's kind of how I got started. Now I'm slowly starting to work on a few personal projects as well.
So when it came to the production of Glory Hounds, what was the very first thing you ended up working on?
The very first thing that we ended up working on was like the project lay dormant for a while because Howley offered to fund it, but I didn't want to like impose. But then I ended up talking to Starfish, who is our main artist now, our lead artist, and he offered to do some concepts for me that I could show to Howley for free. And while I showed those concepts to Howley, and he ended up like really liking them. And I think the first thing that ended up getting worked on for Glory Hounds was Alex's character design, and it kind of went like further from there.
I remember even some early sketches that you had that you just paid for out of pocket when the species weren't really decided on yet.
Yeah, that was before Star even joined. But those didn't end up getting used.
Are there any resources that you recommend or advice that you have for people that are trying to learn for the first time how to code a visual novel?
If when you download Ren'Py, it comes with two visual novels. One is a tutorial that goes into like basically every basic detail you need to know, and the other is an example VN that shows you how to like kind of how choices are handled. And I advise people to like first try the tutorial because it also shows like blocks of code you can reference, and then read the other one. It's called the question, I think. And you can open up the script in basically any word processing program and like look at how it works, like how choices work. Like having some Python knowledge also doesn't hurt because it shows you how to do if/else variables and stuff, which can be very helpful.
See here. So how should one go about assembling a team to work on a visual novel?
Find artists who are open, first of all, and are available for long-term work. It can be pretty hard. Also, join the visual novel the visual novel Discord server. The furry visual novel Discord server usually has like a hiring channel you can cross-reference.
It's also not a bad idea to start with friends and fellow enthusiasts
Yeah.
who have hobbies that complement a visual novel. Like, let's say that you're an artist and you have a friend who does writing. Well, that basically makes it so that you can already mostly produce a visual novel. Definitely for your first project, don't get too caught up on trying to hire like a professional team. I would say that to start with, make something with a small group of people, just some friends to have fun with the project. That's a lot easier. And from there on, you just start talking to people who do things that you need. Like, the more you hang out in furry visual novel spaces, the more you kind of get a feel for who does what and who's available. And if you have good chemistry with some people that do art and you need artists, you can just poke them like, hey, I'm working on this thing. Would you be willing to do like this many sprites that I need?
Yeah, it's also just a very big, open, and connected community. So like there's a chance that someone who is doing work on another visual novel would be willing to help you get at least like some things done on your visual novel if you ask them, and if you're willing to like pay them, of course.
And if they're not open themselves, they might know some other people who are.
I would say networking is really important.
For sure.
What goes into leading a team for this kind of project?
Um, I've had some ups and downs with leadership myself. I wouldn't say I'm an amazing leader, but I think what matters is communication, staying on top of things, and just like treating your staff well, paying them on time. That's very important.
It's kind of let people know what you need and when you need it.
Yeah.
Check in every now and then, but definitely just treat them like people. They are, they are literally your coworkers. They are people who work with you on the project. So just make sure that you treat them as such.
Yeah, a lot of them have like work themselves, or they're students, or they have like lives, so you can't just like treat them like art factories. So you need some patience for sure.
If you have a really big project that is super ambitious and has like a ton of little, I guess, cogs, you could say, it will probably also be a good thing to have something like a Trello. We do not for Glory Hounds because our visual novel isn't that big in scope, but the bigger your scope gets, the more you'll benefit from having a Trello and keep track of like what parts of the project are done and which ones are still in production, stuff like that. I can highly recommend that.
I'm thinking of making a Trello actually.
That's
Might be
interesting.
worth
I
looking
actually kind of
into.
forgot that that's like an organizational tool for people other than people organizing their commissions.
If you think about it, visual novels are commissions of sorts, just with a whole lot of moving parts. You're commissioning sprites and backgrounds and music and bits of coding here and there. It's like it's all mini commissions that come together into one project. So
See, this one's a bit of a data gathering one, but it's do you use any free assets in your game, and where do you source them from, or do you otherwise recommend otherwise like free asset libraries that you recommend people look up?
There's several we don't use free assets in our game. Like Glory Hounds has like a lot of custom made stuff. But back when I was working on other Echo Project stuff, what I would do is I would look on Pixabay, which is a website that has a lot of like stock photos that are free to use with no attribution required. There's a lot of good pictures on there, and you can like just use GIMP, which is an image editing program, toss a filter on it, and then you basically have a background. It's really nice. For music, there are a couple of options. But what we use in Echo Project is like we use a website called Storyblocks that just has a lot of songs and sound effects you can use. But there's also like free sound, and well, Pixabay has sound effects too now apparently. Like there's a lot of options. Always look at the Creative Commons license and if whether attribution is required or not, because if attribution is required, you should have to put it in the credits for your visual novel, like where you downloaded it and who's the artist and that kind of stuff.
Also, Kevin MacLeod is a good source of
Yeah,
music for a lot of people. Like
Kevin
it's
MacLeod,
almost
thank
it's
you.
almost a bit of an in joke in some communities, but like it's a lot. And I think we actually, a small correction, we do have some free assets in Glory Hounds, especially music tracks, because I don't think all of them are from Storyblocks.
Oh yeah, I think like we have one or two that are not from Storyblocks that are just like Kevin MacLeod.
And
Or
I think
something similar.
just using Google or YouTube can lead you to some royalty-free music as well. A lot of them don't require attribution of any kind.
How all roads lead back to incompetech.com.
I hear even the Smithsonian has a lot of free assets you can use now, like in terms of music and images.
For a second there, I thought you were saying that the Smithsonian plays Kevin MacLeod music.
Not that I know of, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did.
How do you maintain the motivation to keep working on your project? This seems to be like one of the biggest roadblocks for people, is being able to really commit in the long term.
I think the most important part is to just kind of chop things up in portions that you can do. Like if you can only write 100 words per day, that's absolutely fine. Like no one needs to be able to write like 10,000 words a day. But what matters is consistency and like just keeping at it. Which and how it works for me is just um like looking at what I can do instead of what I like can't do. So I just like, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I just like chop things up into smaller portions, and I don't like I kind of know my limits. I'm sorry, I botched that.
No, you're fine. I also want to add that motivation isn't always reliable. Kind of like Red said, consistency is. It's like any other sort of long-term hobby or project, like getting good at a skill or working out. Motivation is fleeting, but consistency becomes a habit eventually. And I think for furry visual novels in particular, if it's your first project, like your first ever thing, scope management. Do not start with a giant epic that will take you 10 years to complete with hundreds of thousands of words. Start with something small, because you would be surprised how time consuming it can be, even to make like a one-off thing. That alone can take months of your time if you're not super prepared for it. And there is nothing that drains your motivation faster than slaving away at something for months at a time, getting that first update out, and then realizing you're not going to meet that monthly or bi-monthly goal that you have for your next update, and it's going to take you another 6 or 7 months. I think that is a big motivational killer, realizing after you've created the first thing that it's still going to take a lot longer to get something done. So keep it manageable, especially at first. You'll get a feel for how long it takes to code a build, to gather all the assets, to write a certain amount of words. And with experience comes comfort.
Yeah, hell, even like just when you're thinking about starting a visual novel, like you can start one, but just keep it like start with a visual novel that is 1,000 words, and then take a long look at it, or participate in a game jam with like pre-made sprites, and just take a good look at it and think to yourself, like, did I enjoy that? What did I enjoy that? What did I enjoy about that? What didn't I enjoy about that?
Yeah,
And
you can literally take like free sprites that people provide for jams or otherwise, and just like cobble together a single scene. Just have two characters have a chat at a coffee place or something. You need one background, find like one music track, maybe two, and just make it 1,000 words or less, and just put it together and see how that feels. If it feels like, oh yeah, this is enjoyable, then you can build from there.
What part of production would you say is usually the biggest thing that holds a build back from being completed? Like, what's the bottleneck?
I think if you have a lot of artists and like a lot of hands on deck, um, that all have different production pipelines, it can be a little bit difficult to get everything done all at once. It's kind of one of those restaurant situations where you have like potatoes, meat, and veggies, and they all need to be done at the same time, and they don't always get done at the same time. And in that regard, it's even more important to like communicate with your team, make sure everything gets done, make sure everyone has enough time to get done what they need to, and that they're not overworked, or that someone has like to work twice as hard.
Do you make a living off of your visual novel, or do you have a day job?
I have a day job.
Yeah, me too. If you put together all the money I've ever made on Glory Hounds, it would still not add up to a single month's salary. So I have a regular office job. I'm a translator. That's how I make my money. Visual novels are like, they're a passion project. It's a nice little extra every so often, but
Yeah, I
I'm a
definitely want.
graphic designer. Sorry.
No, it's a big deal. I wanted to put that question because I wanted to set people's expectations, because people put visual novel creators on a pedestal and they think they have a lot of like money and power somehow, and I'm like, oh no.
I mean, it is possible if you get a huge Patreon following or something, or you have like a lot of people that throw money at you. I guess theoretically it's possible, but I would say, I don't know the numbers, but I would say that the overwhelming majority of people have a day job, even for really big ones. I know for a fact that like Jericho from Remember the Flowers has a day job, and that's one of the biggest ones out there. So
also, like, when you look at the numbers on Patreon, you have to consider that a large part of that goes to taxes. Patreon will also take a cut, and the rest has to be divided for like every artist and every person working on the visual novel. So like, usually what the money people get, and the like what they end up with in terms of like actual spending money, is only a fraction of what you really see on websites like Patreon and Itch.
yeah, and I think most writers will want to pay their artists, their musicians, their coders before they take any of it for themselves, because without all those assets, they can't do anything.
This is a big nebulous one, but how much does it cost to create a visual novel?
It depends on the scope. It can be anywhere from like hundreds to thousands if you're going really big and if you're really pulling out all the stops. And that's not counting like possible subscriptions you might have to like audio services or stuff like that.
It depending on the skills that you have, it can be almost free. If you know how to draw, then obviously you can make your own assets. You can just make some sprites and get music and backgrounds from like free resources. Or if you're working with a group of friends and you just happen to all have some of the skills that come together and it just starts off as a passion project, then it doesn't have to cost a lot. But the reality is that, you know, most people can't really do a lot of things all by themselves, so they need to spend money on sprites. And the higher quality the art is, the more you're going to have to pay. So I would also suggest that if it's your first project, it doesn't need to have incredible production values. So you can keep the costs down if you're willing to be a bit more modest. Because at the end of the day, I think if your writing is good and you have passable sprites, I would say that's the baseline of what you need, and everything else is sort of icing on the cake and can evolve over time.
I will add that, like, for a lot of beginners, I know there's like a need to make your visual novel like visually appealing, and obviously visuals are important, but like, do not go bankrupt just to make your visual novel look pretty. What matters most is cohesion and like how it feels. Like, I'd much rather have like sprites that don't look as good and that aren't animated and what have you with all the like newfangled technology in for EVNs than like just a pretty visual novel that doesn't like read well at all. Like, what matters is that you have an aesthetic in mind and you stick to it and you stand behind it.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on how to advertise and run a Patreon to support the development of a VN?
I I don't run I don't run a Patreon of Echo Project. But,
I've talked to a few people that have. Oh, sorry. If you want to.
oh no, I was just gonna give some tips on advertising. Maybe, make a Blue Sky account, or I guess Twitter is kind of passe right now, but definitely make a Blue Sky account. Keep people informed. Post like maybe some concept art or like little blurbs about what you're doing every month. Yeah, and just keep keep it consistent. And also, one thing that is important in terms of advertising and PR is that like I kind of want to lay this down. People are going to have negative opinions about you and your writing, and it is important that you do not let it get to you. And it's also important that you try to avoid responding like on Blue Sky or Twitter or whatever to those comments, and you keep a cool head, because whatever you say and whatever you do will reflect on you and your visual novel, and like some people might not enjoy that or like that.
Yeah, as far as advertising goes, pretend you are a business, because in essence that's what you are. If you keep it professional, like if you have your own private Discord server for fans and you want to chat with people, that's okay. But the mass communication, just keep that professional. Or at least if you're gonna interact, keep it positive, I would say.
Yeah, I would also advise people to make a separate account for their visual novel and not like advertise their visual novel on their personal account, just to like keep that separation of like personal space and professional space.
And definitely add a link to your Patreon in your visual novel itself. Like if you at the end of a build or whenever the credits roll, or could even be on the main screen. I've seen that happen. Just willing to, hey, if you like our work, then throw us a few bucks on Patreon or coffee or whatever it is that you use. That never hurts, because people need to be reminded. It's also one of the reasons why for the YouTube algorithm, you always hear people say, hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. You want some kind of call to action in the visual novel itself. And it doesn't have to be obtrusive or anything. It can literally just be after a build. Thanks for playing. If you like what we do, support us here.
That's absolutely true for YouTube, is that if you ever actually say to subscribe or check out the Patreon and so on, that actually leads to more out results. And that's why people say it all the time, which, speaking of which, if you like this video, how do you
destroy that like and subscribe button?
Demolish that subscribe button. Werewolf that subscribe button. How do you choose which assets are worth making for each build versus what's best left for the imagination?
The assets that are worth making for each build are assets that will appear for a longer period of time. So if you are like going, okay, let's say we have two characters. One is like a character who will appear in like every future build, and the other character is one that will only appear for like a scene or two. Then obviously prioritize the character that is going to be available in or be visible in like every build. And same goes for backgrounds. Locations that are recurring take precedence over locations that only appear in like one build or like one scene or just a tiny part of a scene. And if you have like a scene that takes place in a dark room, it's perfectly valid to like just leave the background black. Like, it's no big deal. You don't need assets for everything.
It's also a little bit of personal preference. You need to decide for your project if it's important to show everything or if you want to leave things to the imagination. Because, for example, if you're writing a horror story, a lot of people enjoy having to fill in the blanks because part of what works is you get into people's heads and you get them to feel a certain kind of anxiety, and that works best if you leave stuff to the imagination. Like for us in Glory Hounds, we're going with a very comic book style, and a lot of our characters have very, cartoonishly crazy lives, so it's fun to put things in the backgrounds that relate to them. But it's definitely not something that you need for every project. So it's kind of like decide for yourself how much you want to show. Because the thing is that anything you don't show, you can still write.
Before Glory Hounds, what is your background experience with writing?
I didn't have much experience with writing. I've done some like tiny things for myself, and I wrote several short stories for Howley back when Echo was still ongoing. I wrote for the Smoke Room before it left Echo Project. I worked on the Smoke Room for like 2 years. I worked on Cliff's Route, and that's like basically all of my experience.
I got started in college back when I rediscovered a Disney afternoon show called Tailspin. I found a fan fiction community, and that's kind of how I got started. My first ever stories were basically Tailspin fan fiction. And I had a very cringy Gary Stu kind of self-insert character that later on I decided, you know what, I'm just going to turn that into his own thing, and I created my own universe and wrote a whole bunch of stories that I only published with like a small group of friends and a few like fellow students who were also writers and stuff. And then after that, I kind of went on a hiatus for a while, and it wasn't until Red asked me to help out on Glory Hounds that I really got back into writing. But I have like a dozen or so projects that I started, wrote anywhere from 1 to 3 chapters for, and then just abandoned them.
Having an extremely self-indulgent OC main character is just a rite of passage, I think.
I think honestly, I mean, I poked fun at myself, but if it keeps you motivated and you have fun with it, then by all means go for it, because sure, it might be cringy and bad at first, but the more you do it, the more you'll get a feel for like actual writing, like what works better and what doesn't work. And that's something that comes with experience. And if that experience includes just writing, stuff for you, just go for it. It's like writing is self-expression, and you don't have to write for an audience all the time. You can just write for you, and that's also practice.
I think some of my first fiction writing back in the day was basically like in the Matrix Online forums before it came out, which when the game came out, I couldn't even run it, it turned out, so it was a waste of time. But I joined RP threads and used like the whole spoon bending logic to make like essentially Edward Elric in the Matrix universe. As like a 16-year-old.
Hey, I appreciate a Full Metal Alchemist fan, so.
Do you think that choices are important for a visual novel?
It depends on the visual novel you're writing. Choices give the player agency, which is nice, but that doesn't always fit every kind of story. Again, like Sabre said before, it's also like personal preference. I personally believe that choices work better for games that have more blank slate protagonists, because choices kind of imply that like every possible option has to gel with how your protagonist works, and that is easier to do with a self-insert or a more blank slate character like Marco from Ad Astra. Cause like every option has to make sense for your main character to want to do, and like depending on your protagonist, that just can't always really happen. Like sometimes you just want the main character to sit down and do as they're told.
Yeah, that's also a way to avoid ludonarrative dissonance if the choices mean that your character has to do things that from a character development standpoint don't really make sense. That's a little weird. But I think, yeah, it's personal preference. Choices can be important for a VN. They don't have to be. I personally, usually I prefer, I guess what you would call kinetic novels, that just are a story from start to finish where you don't have to worry about choices. Because I feel like other than a route change, I personally just want to see the story that was written. But again, that's just me. I've enjoyed Ad Astra and Echo, which were my first ones, and they have choices that lead to different endings and stuff, which is completely fine. So it's, yeah, you decide.
I will say that if you do decide that your VN needs choices and you want to implement them, my personal preference is that I would much rather see like fewer choices with a larger impact than way too many choices that have no impact at all. And also, if your choices lead to a bad ending, make sure that the player has an idea of what they did wrong and they can easily go back to the choices to fix it, rather than just like being like, well, here's your bad ending. Goodbye.
Have fun going back and trying to figure out how to get the good one.
Yeah.
Do you plan the entire story from the very beginning, or do you leave it open to changing direction from chapter to chapter?
It's different for Glory Hounds because Glory Hounds is very like self-contained for each chapter. Usually what Sabre and I will do is we'll make an outline at the start of production that loosely describes how the plot will go, and then we work based on that, and then things can still change. But it's different if you have like a visual novel that is just one continuous story where like you need to figure out where to cut off and how to best like write out every little thing.
It also really depends on what kind of writer you are, because there's not really a right or wrong answer. Some people write best if they just kind of go with stream of consciousness. They're in the moment, they just write whatever comes to mind. Other people are more like architects. They want to have the foundation from start to finish so they know what they're working towards. I would say don't get hung up on either. I'm a planner myself. I like having a very clear idea of what happens. But even then, you might run into a situation where you're writing and you're coming up on a very big plot point and you're realizing that, hey, maybe I kind of want to do that other thing instead. And I feel that more strongly, then you kind of need to go with that and replan everything.
My personal suggestion is to like create an outline, but keep it loose enough where you can still change things if you don't end up liking them.
Yes. And don't be afraid to throw away things that are not working.
As they say in production, kill your babies. I think that's the phrase.
Kill your babies and kill your ego.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to abandon ideas that you previously thought were important to your story?
Yes, several actually. It's not even like big ideas that would have like considerably changed the story. It's just like little things. Like in issue 2 of Glory Hounds, Alex ends up running into Ahab, who's basically the leader of the villain group. That are like the Glory Hounds, like arch enemies. And the original plan was to have him come along on a blind date, but we ended up just changing it to them like ending up fighting and then like meeting afterwards and being like, I know who you are, but I'm still into you. And I think that ended up working way better.
It did, though it did mean that we ended up losing the incredible aliases of Spotty Hottie 69 and Moby Dicking.
Moby Dicking.
Oh my god.
Yeah, there's another example too where I think it was also an issue 2 where we were briefly contemplating
Oh yeah,
making a certain character evil. I guess we could say, like, if you haven't, I feel like at this point it's been long enough.
Yeah, originally
we were considering making Fenna evil.
Originally Fenna was supposed to be evil, and she was employing Kamo, who was employing the Saltwater Syndicate. It was a whole like thing, and we ended up cutting it to just make it
didn't feel right.
I'm eternally suspicious of the green in characters in visual novels now. This keeps happening. Every character that wears mostly green, they're always like either they're going to betray the group, or at some point we're planned to betray the group. How do you assess which feedback to listen to?
Always listen to constructive feedback, and try to cut the chaff from the wheat, as it were. I cut the chaff from the wheat. Is that it?
Yeah, it's chaff.
Like just if someone criticizes you, try not to let it get to you. Just like read criticism, figure out what you can use from it and apply that. Don't get hung up on comments like your writing sucks, I didn't like the art, Because if you get hung up on that, it's just gonna be really depressing.
I would say that the most valuable feedback is from like other creators that also write. If they have something to say about your story, because they know what it takes to make something, and the criticism they give you will be very constructive. And I think, generally speaking, you want to gather as much feedback as you can during the writing process and not after.
Yes.
So
always have beta readers.
Yes, get beta readers. If you have a big enough team, make sure that your document or your project is open for them to read and give feedback on. That's what we have with Glory Hounds. We have a couple of friends who are part of our inner circle. They'll usually have access to our story ahead of time, and sometimes they have tips for something that might not work. Obviously, in our case, since we write together, we talk about what might work and what might not work, and sometimes we have differing opinions, which also helps. As for after, sorry, go ahead.
I will also say that it's not a bad idea. Like, I'm just piggybacking off what Sabre is saying. It's also not a bad idea to read your script out loud multiple times as you're writing it, because that really helps you like nail the dialogue and figure out if it's like awkward sounding or not.
Yeah, we will literally, when we write, we're in the same room together. And we'll be sitting on the couch with the script, and we'll go through the whole thing line by line. And if there are things that I really trip over, then that means that it probably could do with a little bit of rewriting. Because if I trip over it, then someone who records a video for their YouTube channel might as well. Of course, we are nasty little bastards who throw in a lot of Dutch words for fun to trip people up on purpose, but that's a different thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, as somebody who has read Glory Hounds out loud for YouTube audiences, I very much appreciated that it reads like people. It was made by humans for humans, which isn't always entirely the case when you read free visual novels that seem to have just been put out in one go.
I wouldn't say that we really revise the story a whole lot after we publish it. There are, if a certain critique is noteworthy enough to the point where it's, oh, we said something here that might be a little problematic, like a phrase or a sentence or a term, we'll change it. But we really don't go back to mess with complete story structures, or at least we haven't yet. I'm not saying that we never will, but I think it is best, generally speaking, to take the criticism and feedback that you get moving forward.
Yeah,
but that's my personal opinion. I also know that people go back and completely revise earlier builds.
It's very easy to get stuck in a rut where you just continually doubt yourself in your writing, and I don't really have a solution for that, but the key is to just push through and try to find your groove anyway, and just try, and it'll eventually come back to you.
I'll tell you right now that even I routinely feel a lack of confidence in my writing, and it always ends up okay. It's just a rite of passage that you have to go through.
It's like you're going for the same character arc for every update you put out.
Yep. It's never ending. You better just get used to it.
I think people would appreciate knowing how little confidence most people have when they're working on things in general.
Yeah, a lot of people seem cool on the surface, but they're also just insecure behind the scenes. It's not bad to be insecure, I think.
No.
Even with the video essays, I feel like I genuinely am relearning how to make one every time I do one. Like I did not, almost like I haven't learned anything so far, and it's been years now.
I mean, you want to do better than you did last time, right? That's a very, if it doesn't live up to the thing I've already done, then I'm a failure. It's that kind of inner voice that keeps coming back and that you just need to learn to tune out when it matters.
All right, we're nearing the end here. In a more comprehensive term, what is the biggest trap you see beginners falling into, or what do you wish that you had known before you started making your VN?
I'd say the biggest trap I see beginners falling in is wanting to do too much based on what other visual novels with more resources are doing. Like everyone wants to have a visual novel with like 4 distinct routes that all have unique writing and all have unique characters tied to them and all have unique locations. And um that's all well and good, but the thing is, if you do that, you're going to be stuck to your project for at least a year or 4, maybe 5, and that's if you're lucky. Like, just consider that Echo took like 5 years to complete.
It all goes back to scope management. You want to. The biggest trap that beginners fall into is also the same thing that kills motivation. Like Red said, is wanting to do too much at once. You want to get a feel for what it's like to make a VN before you embark on a massive journey. So make something small first. Get a feel for that entire production pipeline. Which parts you enjoy, which parts you don't. Because it's extremely easy to get started on something, realize how much work it is, and then you end up with a very difficult choice that you have to make once you realize that you don't really care about your project anymore. Do I keep working on it despite not enjoying it anymore because I started on something, or do I want to abandon the project halfway through or less? So start small. Like, start with a game jam if that's what it takes.
And we're now on the last question. This is the free space / soapbox moment of just like, is there anything that you would like to tell people looking to make visual novels, or even your peers within the industry, or just things you'd like to say about visual novels that we didn't get to today?
Just don't give up. Like, keep doing what you're doing. I know that sounds very cliche, but like, it's a lot of work, and you can be proud of yourself for sticking with it.
And to add to that, make something you're passionate about. Make something that you would want to read. Don't make something that you think will do well, because what people care about can always change and shift. But if you make something that you're personally invested in, like, I wish someone made a story like this, then that's the kind of story that you'll want to write. Or if it's something very personal that you want to tell and you want to turn that into a story, make it regardless of whether you think it will do well or not. Because if you personally care about a project, it's a lot easier to see it through to the end. And there's no hard and fast rules about what a furry visual novel should be, right? Horror is an incredibly popular genre, but it doesn't need to be that. It can be literally anything you want it to be.
It can be about baking. It can be about like just hiking through a park. I think what I'll also add as like another soapboxy thing, well, it's not even really a soapbox thing. Visual novel devs are people, and that goes in like that goes positive and also negative. Like, we're just people in the end. We're not like content factories. We're not anything special. I think you can aspire to be like your favorite writer or your favorite artist, but like, do recognize that in the end they're just like regular people just living their lives. They're not like super important or they don't have like supernatural knowledge or anything.
Yeah, don't put them on a pedestal. Because at the end of the day, like Red said, they're just people. They have their own, other than VNs, they have their own hobbies. You know, they might have a really popular furry visual novel, but then somewhere else they might just barely be starting to learn how to knit or something, and they're like a super beginner in a small time thing there. It's like we're all just people with different interests and our own insecurities. Just treat people like you would want to be treated. Like, you can, if there's something you want to ask of a creator or something you want to tell them, like you'll enjoy their work, just go for it, because they are just people, and if they're rude or mean to you, then that's on them, not you. But likewise, also don't, come to them thinking like, oh man, these are such big people, and like you start groveling. Just, no, we're all just, the furry visual novel community is like, FVNs are a niche within a niche, right? It's not, it might feel really big, but outside of this tiny community, basically no one knows what we do. Even within the greater furry community, most people don't read visual novels. So don't make it bigger than it needs to be. Don't make it harder on yourself to enjoy this medium and engage with people.
That goes for critiques and stuff as well. Like when you're talking about when you're critiquing a visual novel, or you're critiquing how long it takes for something to come out, just remember that there are actual people working on visual novels, and those people all have personal lives. And yes, it is on them to communicate if they're struggling with something, but like, just because you don't hear from them doesn't mean that they're just like twiddling their thumbs and doing nothing. They're probably like really hard at work on whatever they're making.
Alrighty, guys, that's all the questions. Oops, sorry.
Oh, sorry. No,
no, definitely go for it.
I just wanted to add that, they might also have a whole bunch of personal struggles that they're just not comfortable sharing online. And like, life gets messy sometimes, right? People get sick. There's family drama. There's stressful work situations. There are like psychological issues, and that's all just me. And then take into account that there might be a whole lot of people on any given project that have the exact same thing. So just try to treat people with kindness and just realize that, we're not robots. We are people. Usually. Sometimes we pretend to be fuzzy animals on the internet, but by and large, we're people.
Alrighty, guys, that's all the questions I had for today. Thank you so much for coming by.
No problem.
Thank you for having us.
I'm a wreck.
You're fine.